Thanks for being here. Subscribe to Cheating Stories Best, so you don't miss.
She looked like she wanted to say something else, but thought about it and turned away. Maria, I said softly. As she turned back, it's over between us, just so you know. I've already met with a divorce lawyer, so I'm set. Obviously, Daddy forced it to be put off, but don't think his stupid maneuvers will turn me into a smug cuckold. You can't, she said in the same soft tone. That's what Dad said. It's on hold for now, I corrected her. Don't try to force me to get close to that idiot of yours. I won't watch him. I won't babysit him while you have a night with other guys. I will do my best to treat him decently, like a child, like a person. Otherwise, you and I are at best roommates. If I can find a way to you all, I will make sure Dad knows it too. You will receive my schedule in advance according to the contract. We will be seen together in public twice a month, depending on the filming schedule. She wisely kept her mouth shut. This selfish woman was no idiot. She and her father won this round and gained some time. I left soon after, called S, and met him at the little bar next to the studio where celebrities go when they don't want other people snooping around. Man, this is terrible, he said, this with compassion. I'm sorry, Chase. What are your thoughts on the next step? I didn't think I answered a little absent-mindedly. I just reacted. I need to soak it all in over the course of a day or so. I'm not even sure I can do anything. Charles has plenty of resources. Nonsense, he exclaimed, his tone becoming more animated. You won't give up, do you hear me? We need to start developing a plan for retaliation. I need Chase Burrows at his best for a new project. We'll start with Bronson. Any man with red blood will feel better about this. Tell your lawyer what happened, that you were coerced. Ask about other scenarios too, learn from him for your new role. Find out if he thinks you should assign a private investigator to Maria for a while. Start making a list of her habits, such as how she spends time outside the home. See if you can install tracking software on her phone. Okay, S, I laughed in response. I understand. Play hard, and I will play. The post-contract is actually very fair to me. Wilmington hates me, but it was like he was trying to teach his daughter a lesson. We sat in silence, sipping our drinks. I knew what S was thinking. Moreover, I knew what exactly he was thinking about his wallet. He was counting on another hit show. For some reason, he also decided that I was the key to success. The last thing he wanted was to have to find a new leading man. Still, I wondered if he had a history of heartache that helped him through this terrible situation. S was a friend and a good guy to have on your side in this town. My visit to the lawyer the next day did not go as I had planned, or should I say how I wanted it to go. He read the post-contract and set it aside, shaking his head. He thought of everything, that's for sure, he said with admiration. That's why he's Charles Wilmington. So, what do you recommend? I asked, not sure what I wanted to know. What's our next step? Next step, he answered, stunned. Nothing, at least that I can think of. He put himself in an advantageous position by putting you in an advantageous position. All you have to do is work, have fun, have an intim on the side discreetly, and when you're done doing anything and everything you want, go home. There's no clause about breaking wedding vows. There's no clause about treating her like crap that is within the bounds of the law. On the other hand, if she screws up, you get everything. Everything that was in your marriage. I doubt she'll go hungry with a family like that. Are you saying that I should just sit back and accept it? I asked incredulously. My temper was growing with every second. That's not what I mean at all, he replied. I'm saying he completely overplayed his cards. Mr. Wilmington is not the kind of person who does this by mistake. He got you into marriage in a house with someone you probably want to strangle at the moment. Essentially, he forces both you and Maria to coexist, perhaps mature at whatever level of torment you both choose. All restrictions lie on her. She can't take the child or the money and run away. She cannot be caught in the public eye in any scandal, intimate or not. If she wants to sleep with you, she even has to warn you in advance, otherwise, she risks losing her son. You're not even the main character here, Chase, he said, leaning forward. What? I asked, my voice trembling. You are a propa too. He continued, his face showing how much he enjoyed Charles's skill. He's using you to make her see the bad things he's done. When my mother was 17 years old, she and the boy she loved decided to take a summer break from each other. She got drunk at a party and have an intimate with some smooth-talking guy, and that guy turned out to be my father. When it turned out that she was pregnant, her parents forced her to marry my father. They were incompatible, they had no common goals, and my mother was heartbroken over what she had done to that other guy she loved, and he loved her. But my parents succeeded. There are dozens and dozens of terrible examples when almost nothing worked for them. They are only 2 years away from their 40th anniversary. They worked hard and got it done. I'm not saying you should, just that it is possible. I needed to think about this. I didn't want it to turn out like this. I wanted to kill them all, but I needed to get my head in order. If Maria really was at a disadvantage, she would quickly find out about it and run to Dad with a complaint, but this was not entirely true. I realized the Pope has already laid down the law for her. In the end, I decided that S's advice was the best. First, I need to get even with that idiot Bronson. I needed to get my manly reputation back by dealing with Duck, and then maybe screw him. Charles threatened him about alimony. Knowing Charles, he would probably fund Bronson if he ended up being an unemployed actor or worse, and he would have done so if I had anything to say about it. That first month on the home front was tense, and icy ting has taken over the once happy marriage. Maria tried, but I was sure that she was just practicing her acting skills. If she asked me to do something that I wasn't going to do, I yelled at her. If she asked me to do something that was once a given in our marriage without asking, I would yell at her. She became very irritated, and I became unhappy as a result. I spent most of my time in the local pub. This put me in a position where I found myself surrounded by very attractive women from Southern California who clearly wanted to party with a celebrity so they could write about it in their diaries. The 3 times I used it, I was already pretty drunk, and the night wasn't memorable. Being cautious, I met them at a hotel a few blocks away. After the first time, I really felt guilty. Perhaps it was my conscience telling me not to behave like Mary. After the first month, I began to spend more time at home. Maria was kind, but at the same time, she gave me a wide berth on the days when I was especially angry. It was like we were both learning and practicing a new dance. Matthew required a lot of attention from his mother, and these numerous interruptions did not allow Maria and me to even talk properly. At the end of the second month, I received a call from S and immediately went to the studio. That evening, I sat in the living room and read the pilot. Maria dispassionately asked what I was reading. She knew it was a script. I put the booklet down and looked at her. My new role, I told her. S has a new role for me. It's the lead role in a new TV drama, and there's no one else in the mix. Maria perked up and asked a few more questions about the role. Finally, she wanted to know when filming would begin and where the city scenes were filmed. In Atlanta. If all goes well, I'll be leaving in 3 to 4 weeks. By then, we will make sure we have a reliable nanny. This will give you a little time to find, some relief. It took Maria a minute to understand what I meant. When she finally understood, she flew out of her chair and ran to her room, sobbing. Of course, Maria's father called me the next day to scold me. Chase, he got straight to the point. When I answered, I was very kind in my offer, much more than I intended. Stop treating my daughter like crap. I'm only telling you once. Next time, you'll be introduced to some new guys from my security team. They will help you understand. Leave me alone, Charles, I hissed into the phone. I agreed with your scheme. That doesn't mean I have to like it or her. That's exactly where you're wrong, he said categorically. Don't test me, young man. I heard the phone click, disconnecting the call. The old idiot still had a rotary phone. I guess Duck's first few payments were made in my name, no less. Through S, I learned that he had been offered a small role in a new reality show, but for some reason, he didn't make the cut. It meant S took care of it. On the home front, I didn't apologize to Maria, but I tried to treat her better. This turned out to be very difficult for me, given that she constantly tried to start a conversation and often asked when I was going to stop being angry with her, stop shutting her out, and sleeping separately. On the last evening before I left for Atlanta, Maria came into the spare room where I was sorting out my clothes and finishing packing. I looked up at her and saw the beauty without clothes hanging on the door frame as if on a copper pole. If I was going to do without it, I would have immediately told her to back off. Be that as it may, no strings attached night was a top priority in Atlanta. I laughed a little mischievously at her attempt at seduction, and her smile turned into a frown. I just nodded towards the bed, directing her with my gaze. No matter how desperate she was, the nonverbal hint was enough for her. She laid down on her back. I looked down at her for a moment. Maria looked expectantly, and I signaled for her to turn her back to me. She looked disappointed, but damn it, I didn't want her to see my disinterested face. I pushed her with great force, sweat poured down my forehead. Maria accepted this without protest. We must give her credit. As soon as I reached the finish line, I went to the bathroom to clean myself up. When I came out, Maria was no longer there. She probably had thoughts that after this we could hug. This morning, I quickly ate a bagel and orange juice before heading to work. Maria never came downstairs. While I was waiting to board my flight, I received a text from her. I couldn't even say goodbye, but I replied that I didn't want to wake her. We both knew this was complete nonsense. My first day was wasted because the film crew didn't have time to find the best angles to shoot the building that was to become my law office. The end of the day more than made up for it when S introduced me to my assistant, Chase Burrows. S said, introducing himself, "This is Jazz, pronounced Jazz, Jazz Chase Burrows." The shitty grin on her face and has told me she might already know what exactly goes into this job. Jazz was a sophisticated woman, stylish in dress and appearance, but radiating an outward intimately. I'm not a fan of giant breasts, and her breasts were large, but at least they were in proportion to her nearly 6-foot frame. Her brunette hair was shoulder-length and shiny as a new penny, highlighting her dark brown eyes. By the fourth day, we had the actual set in place, and we filmed the intro to the show, me driving a Porsche Carrera in the city center, driving down a city street wearing an expensive suit and carrying a briefcase, the weapon of any good lawyer. In the evenings, Jazz and I would go out to dinner with other members of the cast and crew, but that evening, it was just Jazz and me. When I asked if she wanted to go to a club after dinner, she shocked me. "Should we just go to your room?" she asked with a sweet smile and a tilt of her head. She received an order, undoubtedly from S himself. When we got into the elevator at our hotel, 2 large men walked into the cabin with us. I didn't like their look from the very beginning. They didn't say anything until Jazz and I got off on my floor. Jazz's room was 2 floors above mine. "Mr. Burrows," said one of the large men, "Mr. Wilmington would like to speak with you, sir." The request was not formulated as a question. Jazz looked worried, but I knew what was going on, and I was furious. I should have at least taken into account that Atlanta is in Charles's home state. "Jazz," I said, turning to her, "go to your room, and I'll call you in a while." She nodded, still worried about my safety. I kissed her on the cheek and headed back down the elevator. I thought about trying to snitch on those 2 thugs, but I just wanted it to be over so I could go back to Jazz. "It better be good," I said, turning to them. They didn't flinch as they continued to stare at the elevator door. I followed them into the room, but they stopped me and seated us at the counter at the back of the bar. The first thug took out his phone and tapped the screen, then placed the device on the table in front of me. Charles's face appeared on the screen. His tone was quiet but direct. "Good evening, Chase," he began without waiting for an answer. "I'm sure you know why we started this little conversation." "I have no idea," I snapped, "but your timing couldn't have been worse." "I'm sure," he cleared his throat. "Chase, do I need to remind you? Maybe ask one of my assistants to reread the agreement we signed." "I don't think so," I growled. "Are you implying that I somehow violated it?" "No," he said, leaning closer to the camera, "but you were going to." "I see," I mimicked. It looked like I was going to do one of those things that was clearly stated in our agreement. "Why are your clowns after me, Charles?" "Language," he cursed. "You were going to break the clause. The agreement specifically states discreetly." I was careful, idiot. Now I was furious and could not contain my bitterness. I lashed out at him for following me and told him he could shove his post-contract up his gold-plated 5th place. Charles seemed unharmed, watching stoically as I exhaled unnoticed. He replied when I was exhausted means unnoticed, Chase. If my boys feel that others might see and draw conclusions, the paparazzi, they let me know. Understand me, Guy, your invisibility is at my discretion. I also don't like your assistant. I made inquiries about her. Tell your boss to find you a new one, or I'll talk to him myself. I thought you were a smarter person who knows your limitations when it comes to me, and you're starting to piss me off, Charles. I answered decisively, go check on your, and stop trying to control my life. I told you that day in my living room that things weren't going to be the way you wanted them to be. I'm Chase Burrows, and I'm strong enough to hold you. I signed your contract thinking that you would behave honestly. Now I see that you just like to manipulate people. Want to learn some hard lessons, Charles? Do you think you won this game? You don't even know the rules, but I'll be happy to teach them to you. I felt something pressed into my chest under my arm, and everything around me went dark. At some point, I suddenly woke up, floundering in the hotel pool located next to the recreation room, wearing only my clothes. I tried to scream for help, but no sounds came. One of Charles's guards pulled me to the side and then pulled me out of the pool. They carried me in their arms to the entrance of the hotel and then into the service elevator. I began to come to my senses when we reached my floor. Then, I started to fight. The second thug hugged me from behind while the first one used the key card on my room door. I was thrown to the floor as they entered and quickly closed the door behind us. Fearing for my life, I stood ready for a mortal fight. My first weak blow was easily deflected, and the return one hit the left kidney. I immediately fell. Then, I felt a quick and strong kick to my right. I rolled on the ground in agony and was hit in the groin. Mr. Wilmington wanted you to know, one of them told me, this is his game and his rules. Don't leave your room until morning. One of them threw the key card onto my prone body, and they left. Finally, I crawled to the bathroom and got into the shower. Looking in the mirror, I realized what kind of beating I received, one from which absolutely no traces remained. I still don't understand whether they used a stun gun or a contact stun gun. At first, there were no holes in the skin in the armpit area, so it was most likely the latter. The next morning, my lower back hurt badly. I carefully went down to the studio's private buffet for breakfast. Not seeing Jazz, I messaged her but received no response. I began to really worry about what Charles was capable of, in addition to, of course, having me. However, Jazz might just be angry that I didn't call her like I promised. One of the managers came up to me while I was eating and told me to stop by S's trailer before going on set. When S saw me walk through the door, he asked his two assistants to leave. When everyone had left except the two of us, he offered me coffee and sat me down at the table. I did this with great discomfort. Jesus, Chase, he asked, shaking his head, what happened to you last night? I took a few minutes to tell him exactly what happened. Listen to me, he ordered. Jazz is finished. I had to let her go early this morning. What the hell, S? I interrupted him, stuttering. Why did you do that? I could tell from the look on his face that I didn't want to know the answer. That Wilmington thing, he continued, is so deep up your fifth place you'll need a colonoscopy to get it out. I was on the phone at 6 o'clock this morning with the governor of the great state of Georgia. He informed me that it had come to his attention that many of our permits were not in order and that he would be sending several people to all the sites. I was about to defend our process when he took a breath and said, if you remove Chase Burrows' assistant, don't hire another one, and keep him on a short leash. I think I can look past this. Wilmington plays golf with this guy 2 or 3 times a month. They are woven into each other's athletic straps. What do they say, a stitch on a timeline like this in English, S? I raised my voice. I don't know what you're talking about, this guy, he replied, now with disappointment evident from his features. He wants a piece of your 5th place badly. He has connections in this state, in Washington too. He has the governor in his pocket. That's what's happening now, Chase, he continued, and don't be upset. I'm hiring you for a security team with the money I saved on the new Jazz. You're my biggest asset in this project, so it's worth it. I don't want to see you on stream or on social media with a woman, understand? I'll have to let you go, and that would be a breach of contract. You have to do your job. Forget about your personal life, about that idiot, and about Maria too. Lay low for at least a few months and put all your strength into the show. I need you, a lot depends on this, and whatever you do, don't piss off Wilmington. After a 10-hour day and running a good portion of the pilot, I was exhausted. I borrowed some painkillers, and just before returning to the hotel, I borrowed more. After dinner with the film crew, I went to my room. I decided to contact Maria, realizing that I needed to at least stay in touch to get ahead of her father. "Hi Chase," she said cheerfully, "good to hear your voice. How's the show going?" Funny, she didn't ask how I was doing. I ignored her stupid question. "Oh, I'm doing great, thanks for asking," I joked. "Last night, I was tortured and then beaten by your father's charges right here in our hotel, so everything is just great for me." There was a painful silence on the other end, and then, "I'm sorry this happened, Chase," she said sadly. "I talked to Dad this morning, and he told me everything. I heard what you said to him because he recorded your conversation, FYI. I begged and begged him not to do it again, even though I was outraged by what you said about me. He promised me that he had made arrangements with the studio to make sure this didn't happen again. Family, I thought. Hell, I was going to get back at them one way or another. I might even be willing to die to do it." "I see," I said sternly. "So, have you been in trouble before?" "Let me guess, Daddy is probably looking the other way. Did you have a night with Duck in my absence, or was it someone else?" "No, Chase," Maria said, almost in a whisper. "I learned my lesson. I want you and only you. Of course, this sounds like the script of a cheap romance novel, but I will remind you of this as often as necessary. I know you're still angry, and I know you well enough to know that you probably will until you get over it or get even. I'm going to help you, at least today, get started. I'll wait until you get home, and then you can pound me into the mattress like you did the night before you left. I will accept any punishment you want, but please stop playing games with Daddy. We both know he doesn't like you at all, and if you give him a reason, well, I don't know what I'd do without you." God, she was delirious, among other things. However, her cryptic warning about her father probably hit the mark. I told her that I would maintain a short relationship with her if I survived her father's wrath. I knew that she was upset that her impressive speech did not soften me at all, but I stopped caring. Half an hour later, there was a knock on the door of my room. I looked through the peephole, and there stood an attractive, slender woman. She was dressed tastefully but with a hint of promiscuity. I asked through the door, "What do you need?" "Your wife sent me," she said, seemingly embarrassed by my reaction. "Send you for what?" I asked. I just talked to her, and she didn't mention that someone would be coming to my room. "What do you need?" "There is a desire." She looked down one end of the corridor and the other, as if she was looking for someone or maybe someone who was out of my field of vision. I came at her request to have some fun. The last word was formed as a question. "I don't believe you," I said adamantly. "I work today, leave, and take Charles's thugs with you." She was puzzled and stood there for a full minute trying to figure out whether she should leave. Finally, she turned to the elevator, and that was the end of it. 40 minutes later, Maria wrote a message. "Why did you send her away?" I called her immediately. "What are you talking about, Maria?" I asked sourly. "How did you find out about this?" "Because," she sighed, "I sent her." "I already told you, well sort of. Before, she is an expensive escort. I know Dad ruined your fun last night. I told you I was going to start making amends. First of all, I grumbled, I don't trust you or your father." She nervously looked left and right, waiting for me to open the door. "I'm sure it was a ruse so your father's thugs could shoot me again." "No," she answered sadly. "There was no one but her. Dad doesn't know that." I heard her. I shouted, half strangled, "Secondly, I don't need pity from you or anyone else. Have you forgotten who I am? Anywhere in America, I can just walk up to a woman, show her my $1,000,000 smile, and just ask. You remember who you married, right?" "Yes, I remember," she said even more quietly than before. "I'm sorry that everything is so bad. When are you going to come back home?" "Probably another week to 10 days. I told her. Do me a favor and move my things to the spare bedroom downstairs and make sure the other 2 guest rooms upstairs are clean and ready to use. For what? She asked. It's none of your business, I answered sharply. Just do what I ask. Soon you will see everything. The next day, I visited S's trailer for the second time in as many days. I threw the check on his desk. What is this? S asked, puzzled. Payment for my protection, I stated frankly. You can put it on deposit or advance it like all our other expenses, but in any case, I want to make sure that Charles will not be able to close it even for a short time. S was a smart man. In addition to being a wealthy film company executive, he most likely had ties to the Jewish mafia in Hollywood. I knew that his cousin partly owned one of the big porn studios in the valley. It took him no more than a few seconds to understand what I said. He simply nodded and put the check in his drawer. I threw myself into my work. Many on set who had worked with me before quickly noticed that I was not the Chase they were used to. That last week in Atlanta, they saw a dark, evil side of me. I tried to convince some that I was just getting into character, hoping it would work by the time we finished filming. Where our crews were packing up and heading back to the studio, people called me Tom Cruise Jr. Tom was an idiot on set and made everyone miserable and anxious. I entered my house 9 days after my last conversation with Maria. Mark Templeton and Davis Reggiano were with me. Both were huge men, but they assured me they were very agile. The list of celebrities they had worked security for was impressive, to say the least. Maria looked shocked when I presented them to her. I asked if she had prepared dinner or would be ordering, and asked that I bring my 2 friends' orders before calling. I escorted the men to their rooms so they could get settled. After dinner, it turned out to be takeout. After putting Matthew to bed, she asked to talk in private. What is it? She asked, upset. Why are they here? You know why, Maria, I said ambiguously, or at least you should know. Daddy Muscles better not mess with me anymore. Tell him, okay, if you care about me as you claim, then tell him. I'm using every resource I can to finish off his 5th place. It was melodramatic, but I felt much better protected. Chase, she looked demoralized, just stop it all, please. We can move forward. I know you hate him and probably me, but challenging him will only make things worse. He doesn't lose, ever. Stop, Maria, I said in a more subdued tone. Just stop. Your father, at least for a minute. You made it. You had an intim with Duck and got pregnant. You ruined the lives of many people, including your son. You made a fool out of me, and good old Dad is just finishing the job. Stop acting like everything will ever be okay between us again. This is wrong. You never apologized to me, and now after all this time, I don't care if you do. You have a man, not a husband, under contract, threats, and intimidation. You have an illegitimate son with whom I will never connect my life. You will never work in this city again if I have anything to say about it. At best, you'll be on cheesy talk shows playing the victim, and that will be your source of income unless your dad takes you in at some point. From time to time, I will probably have a night with you for pleasure, just like any other fan. In the end, your sweet daddy and I will have a showdown. I will play the long game, scheming and figuring out how to eventually destroy him. So stop hiring prostitutes and trying to make amends. We are no longer, and we never will be, I finished. Maria's head dropped, her shoulders slumped, and she walked away. Fine, I finally got through to her. Maybe now she'll understand. Maybe she'll call her father and tell him to go and kill me. The work was good for me. People forget about gossip and old news over time, especially in Tinseltown. S treated me better, and I felt more confident in my investment. Playing lawyer was also good for me. My character was the proverbial good guy, a family lawyer with a conscience and morals. Most of our episodes were loosely based on some Dateline saga or strange internet stories about abandoned spouses, mostly husbands. I returned home in the evening, usually had dinner with my guards, played cards, or watched baseball. Maria tried for those 2 weeks after I told her everything to remain in my company. She would tell me about her day or what Matthew had done. I listened but usually answered in very few words. There was no affection, no friendship. Maria became increasingly despondent. When the 4th month began after the loud revelation, Maria hardly spoke at all. A few weeks later, I was pulled aside on set for an urgent phone call. Maria was taken to the hospital. A neighbor was looking after the child. I left in a hurry, mainly because of how it would be received on set. Most of what I did these days was almost entirely dependent on my image. The doctor walked up to the nurse's station and pulled me aside. "Mr. Burrows," he began, "your wife, to put it simply, had a nervous breakdown. She suffers from severe depression, which is most likely related to the postpartum period. It is rare for an attack to begin so soon after the baby is born. Are there other events in your life that could be considered traumatic?" I had to think twice about how to answer his question. I didn't want to be made to look bad, or for someone at the hospital to spill the beans and cause a scandal. I just told the doctor that I had started a new drama series, and it could be causing a lot of stress in our marriage. I lied when I told him that. Maria seemed sullen because she was attached to the baby and couldn't stay in the spotlight. I said I found it a very difficult adjustment. I didn't know what else to say or if he even believed me. When he finally said that I could see my wife, I hesitated for a few moments. I'm sure he realized it, judging by the way he frowned. He led me to Maria's room. She looked peacefully sleeping under the influence of medication. She seemed calmer than I had seen her in months. It was hard not to sympathize with her. I pushed all my love away, hid it like a squirrel hides nuts. Some of it spilled out, and a deep sob suddenly escaped from my insides. Sitting next to her, I slowly dozed off. After a while, I heard her softly calling my name. "Chase," she asked as I stuttered awake, "what are you doing here?" "Where's Matthew?" "Matthew is fine, and he's with the nanny," I said. Well, I'm still your contact number." "What happened to you?" "I don't know," she answered with alarm. "I think I'm just tired. I always dreamed of raising our child together with my husband, as if on the same team, even before I met you. Now I think I need to get used to doing it on my own. Have you talked to the doctor?" I told her what he said and what answers I gave. We discussed what and how much she should say. I also reminded her that Matthew was not our child, and that was the only problem that got us where we were. I asked her to be careful not to let anything slip when she was asked questions. "It's strange, but the more we talked, the more we came to some kind of truce, Chase," she finally said. "I don't want to fight with you. I know what I did to us. First, I got involved with Duck, and then I dragged my father into this. I regret all of this. I think it will help us both if we just try to be polite to each other, no matter how difficult it may be. I don't know if I have the strength, Maria," I was honest. "I can't turn off anger just like I try to turn off love." Her eyes widened, and I raised both hands up, palms facing out. "I knew you still loved me, even if just a little," she said softly. "I can only repent if you allow me. If you want to have an intim with another woman, just bring her home, take her to your room. I won't interfere, and you have your guards so Dad won't be able to cause you any problems. When Matthew is old enough to remember everything, we'll have to come up with something else. I'm not asking for us to get back together. You've made your feelings clear, and I understand them. I just think if we try to be friendly, we can get Dad out of our lives. I can't raise my son alone when he's breathing down my back, and you and I are constantly in conflict." "Yes," I answered. "Listen, Maria, I'm just so damn angry about everything. I didn't mean to crush you, although you probably deserved it. We just never talked about what happened without your father's intervention. I can't promise that we will be friends, or at least I can't promise that I will, but we can try. In the meantime, you need to be strong for Matthew, and I will try my best." The next morning, I talked to S. I wanted him to hear what I had planned and relayed to him my conversation with Maria. We talked until the director knocked on his door. "Listen," he instructed. "I think you are doing the right thing for yourself and for everyone else, and certainly for the child, Chase. I've been in this business a long time. Some of today's actors, as you well know, were the sons and daughters of other famous people. Some, perhaps a disproportionate number, find out later in life who their real father is. I'm not telling you to accept it, although many before you have done so. It depends on you. Your main problem right now is that man Charles Wilmington. You get rid of him, and that gives you and Maria a second chance to figure things out on your own. No matter how this ends, that's what I did. Most of the time, up until Matthew's first birthday, I remained calm and sometimes cold with Maria. She seemed to understand, or maybe just accepted it as punishment. I didn't feel comfortable bringing a woman to my home, so I cautiously set up dates online via email. When I first met a woman named Rebecca at a hotel on the coast, Charles's goons showed up, but my boys started a fight. I think none of them wanted to lose their lives because of an enraged father-in-law and a cheating actor. A cheating actor, that's what I was now, if only because Charles had outplayed me. I pushed this thought into the farthest corners of my mind. It was Maria's fault anyway, I told myself. I was acquitted. Matthew's birthday party was the first time I saw Maria's family since she was released from the hospital. It was the first time I saw Charles since the big reveal in my living room. I knew you'd see things my way, Charles's stupid voice said, coming up behind me as I grabbed a beer from the refrigerator. I see you and my daughter get along well, my boy. I turned to see his face somewhere between an evil grin and a smile of satisfaction. God, he was delusional, living in an alternate universe. Hi, Charles, I said, trying to fake my own evil grin. I haven't seen your henchman for a long time. There's no need anymore, son, he replied, patting me on the shoulder. I felt like I was dirty. You've learned some valuable lessons since we last spoke. Competing with my muscles was wise, but learning to be more careful was even wiser. You're an idiot, you know that, I spat. You still think that everything will end according to your plan, don't you? I can't wait to see the look on your face when you get knocked over. Trust me, I will be there to see it. Well, Chase, Charles chuckled. I was only being reasonable. First of all, I never expected you to forgive my daughter. Did I? Hell, if her mother did something like that, she would quickly go missing. Secondly, I gave you the best way out of this situation. You will have your own life, she will have hers, and my grandson will not grow up to be some kind of perverted psycho. 9 or 10 years, and you can move on with your life. They say that everything a child needs to learn, he will learn by the age of 5. This is where I hedge my bet. Time flies, Chase. You just keep being as smart as me, you will get freedom, and I will preserve the integrity of the family. I wanted to go to the kitchen, take a knife, and plunge it into his damn throat. He knew, as did I, that over time, everything would calm down, even normalize. He was counting on it. But I'll show them all. He changed the subject. And one more thing, Chase, he said more seriously. I was looking after Mr. Bronson. I see he's having trouble getting any meaningful work. I suspect you have something to do with this, and I admire that. In the next few weeks, I will send a revised version of our agreement which states that in exchange for your continued cooperation, I will pay him child support if he flies the coop and will also make monthly payments to a college trust for Matthew. I don't care, I shrugged. He's your family, not mine. I don't care what you pay for, just do it and restart the revised agreement. I do not need money, give them to Maria directly, and she can detail what she is buying for the child, including food, of course. Of course, young man, Charles grinned and playfully hit me on the arm. Certainly. He then walked away to join the celebration. One evening a few months later, when I returned late from a date with a fan, Maria was sitting in our living room with a glass of wine waiting for me. I told my guys I'd see them in the morning, grabbed a beer, and sat across from her. It's so late and you're not sleeping. Why? I asked. Problems sleeping? No, she sighed in response. I want to ask you something. She hesitated for a few moments as if trying to find the right words. I just waited, sipping my beer. Do you think I could become one of your fans? She asked sweetly. Just from time to time? What? Do you want to have a night with me? I laughed at her. Her poor sweet face sank. Maria, I said more seriously, the problem is not physical. The thing is, I don't trust you. She looked at me sadly, one tear rolling down her right cheek. I know, she whispered. I'm just asking for a favor. I don't deserve this, but I haven't had a night with anyone since, well, the day before you left for Atlanta. It was the only time since that day that Dad and I were ambushed right here in this room. The next day, I decided that I would try celibacy. Either that, or secretly, like you, secretly. But I decided that I did not want to be a woman, a wife, and a mother in a twisted, broken marriage that was not a marriage at all, and at the same time, be a cheater. Even if I was invisible, I would still know what I was doing. The therapist I see after my breakdown thinks I made a good choice. She calls it courage, but I don't know what it all means. I just feel so terrible guilt for what I did to us, you know? Damn, she seemed sincere, and yet I didn't know. I was clearly wrong about her all along. When I talked to her about my problems, she told me that I should learn to deal with things by thinking about them. She told me that since I live with you and still love you, I should just ask you. She told me that if you say no, then I will end up where I am now, except I will have the answer, and then I can make other decisions based on it. You see, Maria, I said, leaning forward, this is trust. I want to believe you, but I just can't. Sure, I still find you attractive, but inside, well, I just don't see how we could be together. That's fair, Chase, she replied as if I had thrown her a bone. I'm just asking. I see you every day, and then I use my toy, thinking about you at night. Maybe it sounds stupid to you, but I still think about you. Sometimes I watch one of your episodes. You look damn nicely in a suit. Basically, if there's anything I can do to convince you, just say it. I thought for a moment. Okay, I said. No promises, but we'll need protection on hand if I ever decide this is okay. Oh, she said, amazed. You don't believe that I'm not dating anyone? That's not true, I said quickly. I'm dating others, and I don't want Matthew's mother to be at risk. Maria smiled, but it was because of the loneliness in which she was. Her expression showed her pain at even bringing this up. I'm going to bed now, Chase, she said flatly. Thank you for listening to me. 2 weeks later, while we were filming the season finale, I received a message with a photo. It showed Maria in the hot negligee I gave her for our first anniversary. Under the photo, it was written, I hope you want to celebrate the finale tonight. I know what you said, and I'm sorry if I'm being pushy. I just can't take it anymore, please. That night, I have had with Maria. I asked Mark and Davis to take the day off so we could be alone in our house. There was no love. It was amazing and very sad to me that I could have a night with my wife like I have a night with all the other women. Our love was truly dead, and I know she felt it too. Over the next few months, Maria and I had an intimate few nights, and then it slowed down to once a month. Time passed. I threw myself into work. The show went very well. Maria attended Hollywood events with me, as we agreed with Charles. 2 years in a row, she stood next to me on the red carpet at the Emmys. We went to dinner a couple of times a month so we could be seen. All this time spent on my own I've despair, I planned and plotted, trying to find the perfect way to get revenge on Charles. I admitted to myself that I was unlucky. I couldn't think of a way to hurt him without committing a crime. I thought about committing a crime, believe me. I was just too afraid of going to jail. A handsome actor who plays a lawyer on television and even behind bars at a meat processing plant? No thanks. No matter how normal I acted around Maria, she, and I'm sure Matthew, internally worried that I had not become close to the boy. She tried her best, and I have to give her credit for that. I simply could not be anything for the child other than a surrogate, maybe like a distant stepfather. I suppose I had no desire, and every time I thought about Bronson's actions, his offspring made me sick. One of the few bright spots during these years, at least something that broke the monotony, was his friendship with Julie. Her real name is Rebecca, and she occasionally appeared on the show as an opposing lawyer. Our on-screen courtroom antics were appreciated by the fans, but I appreciated her differently. We often had lunch together, and eventually, she talked about her life. What struck me most about Rebecca was her strength. She had a particularly shitty life. She was the adopted daughter of an abusive stepfather, which escalated into an abusive relationship with her number one husband. Having finally found a way out, she fled to Southern California and almost became a woman of easy virtue. The people behind this were rich and powerful, not some seedy pimp. Such are the ways in this damned city. After that, she became a recluse and a patient of a very good psychotherapist in order to turn her life around. She made an impression on me that I was not fully aware of. She gave me the courage to open up about my predicament and the sad state of my life. We became good friends, and I admit that she was very attractive in other ways. Hopefully, there will be time for this to develop. During the second week of filming season 6, S called me into his office again. "Sit down, Chase," he told me, smiling widely. I sat down, and S lit one of his signature huge cigars. "My boy," he continued, "have you been following Duck Bronson?" "No," I answered, "not for a long time." "And what?" "I'm not sure you knew," he began, taking a few puffs on his cigar. "Ever since he was blacklisted, he fought for his life and eventually got a job with my cousin in porn. Albert, if you don't know. Bronson has a huge piece of schmuck dangling between his legs. This time I didn't have to get my reference book out, Yiddish for Dummies. However, it made me angry." "You," S growled. "What do you mean, easy?" "Damn it," he coughed as he exhaled. "I think I have a wonderful gift. Bronson has picked up a little blight and has been out of work for the past 2 months. Just last night, Albert was telling me his heartbreaking story. He plans to move back to Norway to be with his family. How will this affect me?" I asked. "Well," he stuttered, "you know the dark, the bad side of Hollywood that we're into. Human trafficking, not pills. Well, if you can convince Maria, I think I can help her and the baby disappear, along with the boy's father, that is, unless you decide to keep it." I was shocked, not by Hollywood's dirty secret, but rather by his ability to move 2 people like that. I admit I had to think twice about his last comment. I have lived in this farce for so long that I have become accustomed to it. On the other hand, Rebecca and I had been in a long-term affair, and lately, she had been discussing what ifs more and more often. I was in love with her, I knew that for sure. The more I thought about it, the more attractive the idea became. I told S to give me 2 days. Maria was also shocked by my proposal. I asked her to call Duck and discuss it. The first thing she decided was that she wanted to stay with me and finally settle our differences once and for all. I pointed out the obvious: I would never treat a boy fairly or with love. I'm sure she understood the reality of this. I told her, in a conciliatory manner, of course, that if this had been an isolated incident that had not resulted in offspring, I might have forgiven her indiscretion. "I don't know, Chase," she hesitated, lost in thought. "I don't even know if I can live with this man." "It hurts, Maria," I replied. "You once chose him over me. What made you do this?" Maria seemed startled by this question. I wondered what exactly she was talking about with her therapist. "Yes," she finally squeezed out. "He was handsome, of course, but he was funny. He made me laugh. But other than that, I think partly because I was doing something forbidden." "Well, it's not prohibited in this city," I reminded her. "Listen, your father holds you within stricter limits than I do. He's been trying to make you into the person he wants you to be for 6 damn years. If you think things will work out between you and Bronson, then why not?" The next evening, she told me that Duck was not only not against this idea, but also that he had never come to terms with the fact that he had a son and he had no rights to him. He was afraid of Maria's father, and they talked about it for a long time. I asked her how she would handle it with Charles. She surprised me with her answer. "I love Dad, but him," she said adamantly. "The more he tried to help me, the more he ruined my life. Now I see his motives as they were, as they remain." Events developed quickly. S told me to tell her there would be an appointment. He handed me the phone so that I could give it to Maria. Duck should not have taken any part in this. If the lovers wanted to be together, he had to go alone and wait for Maria to contact him as soon as she arrived in Europe. Matthew's 7th birthday was quickly approaching. As usual, it took place at the Wilmington mansion. Games, clowns, and bouncing objects were the order of the day. I felt no remorse about what was about to happen. Karma, not revenge, was going to have a real party, and I would be watching it happen. Even paying for the flight was worth it. 2 evenings before the party, I sat with Maria and drank wine. Matthew was put to bed early as they both had tickets for a 5 a.m. flight. The first leg was legal, but I was asked not to ask anything after the first destination. I studied Maria carefully. Accepting her infidelity to Duck still angered me sometimes, but now I had to admit that we had come full circle. I was losing her again, but this time, I was sacrificing her so that we could both have a better life. She looked up at me, emerging from her dreams. "What?" she asked teasingly. "I was just thinking, that's all," I said, a little sadder than I wanted. "Will you really be happy, Maria?" "I think so." She paused for a moment, obviously not as happy as I would be with you. She immediately waved me off, seeing that I was about to attack her. I know, she continued. "It's all my fault. I just sometimes think about us, you know? How things would have been if I hadn't ruined everything. I love you, understand? And I will always love you. You will always come first in my heart," but she continued. I lacked character, maybe even now there is not enough. I had privilege, and I would like to blame it on my rich parents, although it seems unfair to me. I just hope I made you happy, at least in those early years. I really want you to think of me fondly whenever I come into your mind. She was crying, and for some strange reason, I was close to it too. I lived with this woman for 8.5 years, most of which were torture. I wondered why it was so emotional back then. Maybe I sympathized with her or just felt sorry for her. "Do you think everything will work out with him?" I asked, trying to change the subject. "Like I said," she shrugged, "not you, but he means something. Otherwise, I wouldn't deceive our lives. I hope his family will help him mature." She chuckled a little through her tears. "I think a girl should work with what she has." I nodded. I really felt sorry for her. The biggest mistake of her life brought us here. I hoped that for her sake, Doc Bronson would still become a father, perhaps even a worthy husband, and they would live happily ever after. For me, I was looking forward to starting a closer relationship with Rebecca. 2 days later, on Saturday, I stood in the elegant office of Charles Wilmington and drank very expensive whiskey with the old idiot. The alcohol was going well, and I was mentally preparing myself for the acting job of a lifetime. I held out my glass for another serving. "Where the hell is she?" Charles stuttered, looking at his watch. He was getting impatient. "That damn woman never arrives on time." The way we worked it out was that I would fly in from Boston, and she would fly in on a later flight from Los Angeles. The new season of the show was filming in Boston, so Charles had no doubt by that time he was mostly leaving Maria and me alone. "Well," I grinned, "you know your daughter, and she often reminds me of your many character flaws." "Yes, of course," he returned my grin, mimicking me. "You must be very lucky to have experienced some of these shortcomings yourself." I would say that, at least for you, it was a learning experience in many ways. "You know I'm still planning on frying your 5th place, right?" I told him, with sharpness in my voice. "And you will never see it happen, okay, Chase?" He laughed. "If that's what you want." "Think about this," he continued indifferently. "Everyone learned something from this fiasco. Maria probably learned the most, but so did you, Bronson, and even Maria's mother. I did what was required. Can you ever become the kind of person who will do what is required even in the face of difficulties? Now you know how insignificant you were in my plans, but you shocked me. I expected you to lose your temper that day. I expected that I would have to deal with you in a completely different way. But instead, you controlled yourself. These days, very few people in my sphere of influence challenge me. This makes me sad and also bored. It makes me feel like I'm losing my skill. If you want to try, I'll be glad. Trust me. However, think about this, Maria is a different person. I was convinced of this, and to some extent, this was facilitated by the way you reacted to my ultimatum. She will never make such a stupid mistake again, and as corny as it may sound, she will do almost anything to make it up to you for the pain she caused. You've grown up too, son, he reasoned. You are this boy's father, whether you like it or not. And as much as I admit that I once despised you, I have to say that you are a good father and a much better provider even under stress than I could have imagined. This statement made me flinch slightly. He was so an RO in his righteous decree that he didn't even notice that I was anything but a father to Matthew. He didn't even ask his own daughter. I admitted that she could have lied to him, but still another inflated balloon filled with hot air and excrement. I want to say, he continued, I respect you, and you deserve it. However, even then I knew that very few men could bear what Bronson and Maria dumped on you. So I gave you a way out. If you want to leave, I'll reschedule it until next year, on Matthew's 8th birthday, according to our agreement. Our family will keep our comments to ourselves until the divorce is finalized. Great, I said in a pretty good old English style. Charles gets what he wants again. Hooray, jolly old fellow. We both heard the doorbell and moved towards the front of the house. Maria's mother stood there with the envelope, white as a ghost. She closed the door when the courier left. Her eyes suddenly fell on Charles, completely shocked. It was from Mary, she said to the old man, almost in a whisper. The look on Charles's face made me wish I had taken a photo of him. He frantically opened the envelope and began to read. What is this, Charles? She almost begged. What is written there? Charles read without stopping. I suddenly thought about his old heart. I didn't want the idiot to die, but I wanted him to feel deep, gut-wrenching pain. This is from Maria, he said, not in the same authoritative tone that I had ever heard. She is gone. Where did she go? Cried Mrs. Wilmington. She writes that she is abroad. He tried to speak and comprehend the words at the same time. She won't come back. She writes to tell me not to look for her. She writes that she hates Chase, and me too, for interfering in her life. She writes that she has found the man of her dreams, and he is ready to become a stepfather. My God, what's going on? Maria's mother lay curled up on the floor in the foyer and sobbed. Charles finished reading and dropped the letter. In fact, it simply fell out of his hands as the consequences hit him hard. Finally, he looked at me. I also had a sad face, as if sharing his suffering. About 5 minutes later, as Charles's wife rose to her feet, I slowly allowed a wide smile to appear on my newly upset face. Charles looked at me as if he had never known me. I believe, old man, I said in my best cheerful tone, that you have violated our contract. Have your lawyer call mine and negotiate the amount of compensation. Don't force me to send my people to recover. Have a good day. I didn't have any people to send, but it was so fun to say. Both of Mary's parents stood in the doorway and watched me leave them for the last time. Before putting the car in reverse, I took out my phone, took a photo, and saved it for when Maria could contact me to let me know she was okay. The rescue boat has finally landed on the shore of my island of despair. Subscribe to our channel so that your second chaff doesn't cheat on you. And go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think about listening to the next one. What do you think of our second half of the story? I think the first one had more drive than the second. Their marriage of convenience caused more trouble than if they hadn't made it. What do you think? Write in the comments. See you in the comments.